Okay, everybody, welcome to the meeting tonight. This is the Long Island Chiropractic Band of Brothers. Our speaker tonight is Dr. Sarah Hock. She's a fellow nerd. Uh, both of us are into research. So, in the meantime, she teaches down at Sherman. She's a CACCP, in charge of clinical and a case doctor down there as well. So I know she's really doing good by the students. I first heard her speak at the gathering, and she blew me away. And then she came to New Beginnings, and the Sherman crew and really lit it up. So,
Yeah.
Sarah, the floor is yours.
Yeah. So I think we were just talking about a little bit about intro and how we got into chiropractic. So I think I'm going to start there is kind of how I got into chiropractic. I was a biochemist before I became a chiropractor. Went to NC State, was on the East Coast, and wanted to go to med school. I wanted to be a medical examiner. So was doing all the things to do that. The whole CSI thing, was really into it. And innate is pretty amazing. And I remember when I was doing a placement interview for kind of going into med school, PhD, MD program, I got real sick in the parking lot beforehand. I got real sick in the parking lot afterwards. I remember calling my mom and just being like, my gut is telling me that this is not what I should do. She was like, well, you worked really hard. I said, but my gut says no. And so I deferred from school for a year, took off. And I remember I was working in a lab because I was a biochemist. And my ex was one day said, there's a chiropractic school in Spartanburg. It's only like an hour and a half from here. You should go visit. And I said, chiropractic? I don't know anything about chiropractic. I did not know anything. But I came to Sherman. I took a day off of work, came and I walked around campus, which was not as beautiful as it is now. If you haven't been down here lately, it's gorgeous. And the weather was like 70 degrees today. So it was very nice. But I walked around campus. I sat in on a class with Dr. Bill Decken, sat in on a philosophy class, and I applied before I left that day. And I started at Sherman a month later. And I knew right away, I was like, this is what I want to do. And I never looked back. I mean, I love biochemistry, but I never looked back. I've been happy with it ever since. So really wonderful. I came to Sherman. I practiced for several years, about 5.5, 6 years full time. And then I came back to Sherman to teach in the clinic. And over those periods, I had a fairly large pediatric practice and decided that our students needed to know more and decided I was going to write a bigger, better pediatric prenatal curriculum here at Sherman. And now I'm rolling into year 14 soon here. And we run a fairly robust pediatric curriculum that's almost fully implemented with 6 total classes. And
Sarah,
about,
can I stop you there for a second? Because
yeah,
a lot of people are not aware of that. Could you basically tell how Sherman set themselves apart with that pediatric program and the
yeah.
people that you have
So,
working with you?
yeah. So, what's kind of cool about our program is we identified that students really weren't getting enough education in pediatrics, and not just how to adjust, but also how to interpret, how to measure outcomes, how to really show parents the changes that we were seeing with subluxation care. And so we wanted to give them the tools that they could really do that in their own practices when they left. So we have very strategic analysis classes and adjusting classes and management classes and elective classes on top of that, where they really have a toolbox. They could take care of any kid with anything that came into their office from the day that they leave here. They could run a full-time pediatric practice without any problems when they leave here, to the point where our clinic runs about 75 to 80% of our interns get to see a pediatric or prenatal patient before they graduate, like fully take care of them, which is immensely higher than any of the other schools. We have a fairly robust amount of peds and prenatal that come into our clinic, which is super exciting for me because that's my favorite part of what we do. I think really part of what sets us apart in that is we spend a lot of time delving into the pieces of subluxation with our students that build those outcomes that are really easy to measure for them when we talk about kids and peds. We all know that adjusting a kid completely changes their life potential. We've seen it. We've all seen it in practice. I've seen it in practice. Our students even see it downstairs in the clinic here. But we wanted them to understand how that was happening and how they could relate that to their patients. So we spent a lot of time talking about subluxation from the view of, altering proprioception and altering mechanoreception and the altered sensory integration that happens and how that relates to postural and movement patterns and how all of that combined, that altered input that subluxation has created because their bodies were stressed and their systems were not working changes their development from that point forward, and really help them understand that they can measure those changes. That's what's really cool about chiropractic, is that we can easily measure what we do. And I think from a scientific standpoint that I have loved from a biochemistry standpoint is I can say, well, I adjust this, what changed in their life? And I can measure those outcomes really easily for a child when you start measuring development. And so it's just really a nice transition for me to say, hey, what's happening, that those miracles we see in practice, those changes that change lives forever in kids, we can measure all of that and we can publish it and research it, which is so cool.
Sarah, myself, and one of the other docs on the phone call are ICPA certified. Most of the other docs are not. Could you just talk a little bit about when you say you can measure it and some of the
Yeah.
objective measurements you use, please?
Yeah. So when we look at development, kids develop in a very specific trajectory. We talk about physical input drives neurological input and neurological development. So input within reflexes, primitive reflexes, postural changes, their ability to move their eyes correctly. So eye movement changes, auditory verbal changes, gross motor skill changes, things that we can measure from how they walk or how they run to how they skip to how their eyes track smoothly. All of those developmental pieces all lead back to altered input from a subluxation has altered output, and we can measure that altered output in them. I don't know if that was the easiest way to say it, but and we
Well,
measure
it's
all of
basically
those things.
there's objective evidence of chiropractic
Yeah,
subluxation. And
absolutely.
in kids, it's a little bit different in children than it is in adults,
Yep.
because depending on the age group that's coming in, they're going to be in different parts of that development.
Yep.
So,
Yep. And so we can measure all of those, and we do split it. We have a specific infant exam, a specific toddler exam, and a specific grade school exam that measures pieces of development where they are at that time in each section. And we're really looking for, are they getting appropriate input and can they give me appropriate output? Because really what we're looking at is behavior and movement in development is a strict, very not strict, but very direct reflection of how your nervous system is functioning.
I'm
I
sure it
tell
helps
students,
because you have Bill Decken and you have
yeah,
Brian Dooley, so
yeah,
they're really dipped in the philosophy. And then you got Ron Castellucci, you got Ahmed Rossi, and around all of them you got Chris Kent. So
yeah.
you got really quite a team there. How does the other guys help to build that into the system down there, and how do the students benefit from that entire mastermind?
Oh yeah, it's amazing. So Dr. Ron Castellucci teaches our analysis class and our adjusting class in this department. So he's teaching them how to take an amazing look at how the kids are developing, what they're doing, how to measure those pieces, and how to put that all together, then to find a subluxation and adjust the subluxation and monitor those outcomes and what's happening. And he does that in just if y'all know him, he's just so easy and smooth about it, and it's just they just get it right away. He says it and they do it, and it's just really wonderful to watch, and he does a great job with that. He actually taught me peds when I was a student. It was the only peds class we had when I was a student. I know, right? I would say Brian Dooley works in the clinic with me, and I've worked with him for a long time here, and he's been great with helping me really build the program out and feedback and build a way for our students to really get the experiences they need in the clinic. Because it's not just we want them to learn it in the classroom, we want to see them doing it. We want to see them in our community, changing lives, seeing kids in our community, and building that part of taking care of patients.
I think it's really important because I'm in practice a little over 30 years, and I saw torticollis and Rhineck and tortipelvis and whatnot from the kids. But the kids coming in today have many different challenges than they had years ago. The latent delay that's going on in walking, talking, um, the immune system challenges really
Yep.
pretty amazing. Not only just ear infections, but molluscum contagiosum. It's really become rampant up here.
Yeah.
There was that shows that an immune system that's basically failing and
Yeah.
not even protecting the skin. So when you basically have these children coming into the clinic, how do you select the students that are going to work with them? And how much hands-on does the students have versus the doc interacting with the student? Just curious,
Yeah.
because that's something we hear about from other schools, is that the student doesn't really have hands-on. So I'm just curious.
Okay. Well, all of the patients in the clinic that are ped or prenatal, I manage in the background on the ChiroTouch side. So I see all of their files, I read all their stuff. The student, however, does the case history, they do all of the spinal checks, they do all of the adjusting, they do all of the examination, they do all of the patient education. They are building their first practice out of this clinic. That's what we want them to be doing. We want them to do all the hands off, all the nitty gritty stuff. And if they make a mistake, that's fine, because now's the time to make a mistake and learn from that mistake so they don't make it in practice. So they're doing all of it. I mean, really, the oversight is just us watching the adjustments. So a lot of times we'll check behind them if they're unsure of their listing and how they want to adjust, but they're doing it. I mean, I get adjusted by an intern. I brought my kids in to see interns. They're doing all of it.
Wow, pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Could you
And they
talk a
do a
little bit about
fantastic
what you
job.
talked about at the gathering last year?
I think I talked about being in your community and now Netweaving and being in
Yes,
your community.
exactly.
Yeah. I tell students this, and I think this is just something to live by, is that you don't build your practice within the doors of your office. You really, like, we are at this amazing part of being a chiropractor that you build your practice by being part of your community. And to do that, you have to make connections out in community. It's like a spider web. One connection creates other connections. And before long, you have a whole web and you can pluck a piece and it just touches everybody, right? Um, so I think it's important for our students to learn how to be out in their community and how to build a practice and be that trusted advisor in their community. So when people come into their office, you're already a trusted advisor. People are talking about you, people know about you, people kind of understand what you're doing. It makes the whole process easier. We talked to them about being on nonprofit boards in their community. I serve on 2 in our community right now. And I will say, I've served on several over the years. They're always looking for people. Always. They're always looking for people. There's always volunteer things. You know, when people see you out in your community, they feel like you're a real person and they can automatically connect with you. And that whole, what we call net weaving, you're building this connection, this web of all of these connections together. And it really builds a sense of trust in your community for you, for your practice, but also for chiropractic, which I think is really cool because it creates connections for people themselves of like, well, my chiropractor knows this person who knows this person, and it just makes the whole piece easier. So I
It's pretty
think
powerful stuff,
yeah,
you know.
it's amazing. And yeah, I was just at the board meeting. I was at a board meeting before I came on tonight for my kids' school board. I'm on there, and we were doing strategic planning for next year. And I had mentioned to them prior about chiropractic. We talk about it. Wore a Sherman shirt earlier, and I'm always talking about it because I think that's part of it, right? You got to live it, you be it and live it all the time. And they said, have you ever thought about having chiropractic in a school? Not my idea. They brought that idea to the table because they know that those connections are there. And I said, that's a great idea. We should probably meet about that, have bigger discussions about that.
Well, the person to talk to about that's Lorna Cook. She's got it
Yep.
all figured out.
He's
So,
on my radar, on my board, sitting next to me. Yeah. Yeah. But I think
um,
just building those connections with them is what created that.
well, the fact that you can make stuff happen like that, we hear too many people say, "Oh, it's too hard in practice. It's this, that, and the other thing." It's only what you can see as possible.
Yeah.
So I have another question for you. From your vantage point, uh, running the clinic and everything else, and everything you've been doing so far, where do you think chiropractic is going, and where do you think we need to pay more special attention?
I would say chiropractic is exploding. That's how I feel. I think more people want it now than have ever wanted it. I also think from kind of 2 perspectives on what we need to keep going in those directions. We need more research because even though people might not read the research, the professionals that recommend us do read the research. And I'm a big proponent of research telling people what we do. We already know what we do. We just have to publish that research that says what we do because it's there. And secondly, we need to take a step back and know that and be strong in our philosophy to know that what we do is so important because other professions are already talking about what we're doing. They're publishing research about what we're doing already. They're talking about the nervous system. They're talking about stress. I just sent an email today to a student that asked, is there any relationship between stress and early child development? I said, yep. I sent them like 5 studies, none of them chiropractic. But I said, you could look up now about stress and subluxation, and that would make an easy connection between the two if you're trying to talk to someone about it. But we could be doing that research ourselves because they're doing research on their end saying, well, the nervous system is really important. It's important for development. It's important for prenatal care. It's important for life potential. And we should be over here saying, yeah, we know. We have research on that. We're doing it. We've been doing it.
Is Sherman funding any research out of their clinics at all?
We have lots of research going on all the time.
Good.
Um,
I know
I
that
know,
Lona has hooked up with Heidi Havoc, and they're actually setting up a PBRN on what they're doing at the schools there. So, and
yeah,
it's important because we just had Matt McCoy on a few weeks ago,
yeah,
and he talked about the essential nature of research, because research informs politics.
yeah,
And then right before him, we had on Simon Senzon, and Simon Senzon talked about the depth of research that's available, but also he talked about his thesis, which pointed out all of the negative research that was propounded by just a few small individuals.
yeah.
And really, is the school involved with anything out of the, because Simon's doing a special thing with Students for TIC. Are you guys connected to him, or is anything going on with the Sherman
Yeah.
and TIC?
Yeah, and we have a bunch of students that work with McCoy to do stuff. There are lots of research projects ongoing all the time on campus. Students, now more than ever, I find that students really want to be involved in research. I've done tons of stuff with students over the years, but now I probably get an email every 2 or 3 weeks. Hey, what research do you have going on? What can I do? How can I help? So we're seeing that movement that they're even wanting to be more involved with research. And the college has an initiative to be putting out more and more research. I mean, Kent works here, so we're going to be doing more and more research. I think research is one of those things when you say it, even faculty and docs out in the field, they kind of get like, oh, research. It just sounds like it's going to be so much. I think it's a lot easier than you think it is. It really is a lot easier than you think it is. I think research, even just a simple case study, you're just telling the story about what you did. That's what you're doing. You're saying, look, I took care of their spine and look at the amazing changes I saw and how their nervous system adapted to the world and how they function now. If we had more and more of that, people could do big systemic reviews and lit reviews and all kinds of stuff. So
Well, chiropractic has a problem from a research perspective. It's hard to fit chiropractic into a double-blind controlled research project.
yes,
So, the fact that the whole consensus is that that's got to be that way versus preponderance of case studies, which based on a meta-analysis, which is beyond clinical
yeah,
research, that would help us quite a bit.
I agree.
Um, when it comes to doing things at Sherman, um, watching the leadership changes there between what Eddie Cordero did and where Jack Borla's going with it now, it's pretty impressive to watch. I see Sherman strengthening as a school. I know more and more people referring there as well. Um, what my concern is, and I'm a Sherman Region, so I donate down there. What my concern is that because of financial pressures and other issues, like some of the other schools have brought in other things, other stuff. What the thing that impresses me about the leadership down at Sherman is that they are more and more committed to chiropractic
Yeah,
as an art form and as a science. Um, I know that you're down there and you're a big part of that. So I want to thank you for that. But in the meantime, when it comes to this, my question would be, what is the college doing specifically to promote research? And do you have any particular pet projects that you think should be the main focus?
it's a twofold question. Um, Well, our new strategic plan that we're doing has a whole entire like 4 or 5 goals that are just associated with research. So there's all kinds of stuff to promote research going on, from additional training to funding to all kinds of things going on. In whole initiatives, Alan Brewster is doing a big initiative right now on research stuff. Personally, I have a couple case studies I'm working on. I have a case series with a student I'm working on. I have a PBRN that I'm working on with an outside doc outside of Sherman. And I'm always collecting data in the clinic and keeping my eye out. I have a ongoing research list that I would love to get to all of the projects at some time, but slowly but surely I
Fantastic.
work through them.
I want to make a recommendation. There's a good friend of mine, Bruce Steinberg. You probably have
No,
met him. You
Bruce,
know his name, right?
I do.
His focus on research was mental health, and
Mhm.
he does. I saw him do something at the ANJC last year, no, Garden State Chiropractic Society, which I went to, and he did a thing on chiropractic and mental health. So if you get a chance to bring him down as an outside speaker,
Yeah,
I think it'd be fascinating for the students to see
yeah,
that. What I'm finding is a lot of students don't know our history. So the idea that chiropractic had sanitariums years
yeah.
ago, and we took care of a whole lot of things beyond just back pain.
Yeah, and
So
I think that makes a good point. I took over an advanced pediatric technique class this year, and one of the first changes I made is the first day of class, we actually review the history of everything that we're covering for that week. So if we're doing an SOT module, we cover all of the history of SOT from the time that we started to where we are now. We talk about research in it, we talk about who and how we got here and how it connects to other techniques. We do the same thing for cranial work and Gonstead and Webster technique and all of these different pieces that they're learning extra. But I agree with you. I think not knowing the history doesn't give you a good appreciation of where we've come from or how it's all connected together. And they need to know that.
that's pretty fantastic. I got to tell you, I'm really impressed with everything that's going on down there. Guys, I'm going to ask you all to unmute. I want you to basically thank Sarah for coming on. If you have any questions you want to ask her specifically, or you want to just tell her how much you appreciate what she shared with us tonight, please unmute yourself and share a little love.
Thank you, Sarah. You're awesome.
Thanks.
You got a lot of good stuff to say. Boy, I wish I went to school when you were there.
I second that notion. Very impressive. Very cool to
Thank
hear
you.
what's going on down there. It's just, for the future, our profession. That's awesome. To come out of school being competent with kids, pediatrics is unreal. As a New York grad, I didn't have that opportunity, so I had to do the ICPA program, and
Yeah.
it changed the course of my practice of my career in practice, and it's been awesome. So I'm so excited to hear students are coming out with that possibility. Awesome.
Yeah.
Keep going.
I think it's wonderful. I mean, I'm a CACCP, so I totally understand. I remember when there was one class, that's all we had, and so I did all the additional training. I mean, we've had students take care of 2-day-old babies in our clinic. And I
That's
think
awesome.
like, gosh, can you imagine if you were a student, you got to adjust someone when they were in labor, or even right before they had a baby, and then they brought their baby in the next week. What a life-changing experience that is for them.
Yeah, that absolutely. Very cool.
Fantastic.
Yeah, Karen, I think we met, or excuse me, Sarah. Sarah, we met, I think, at Mile High for the first time last year when you came out with the whole entourage. And, you know, I'm an 86 Sherman grad, and I will always consider it to be my school. And, you know, the Cordero era was very exciting. We have a lot of good people in place down there, and to see it evolve now when you guys travel around with you and Karen and Brian and Jack, and it's just like the perfect mixture of the right pieces that we need to represent the school when you guys travel around. And I know it shows very well when you come to the New Beginnings, the Mile Highs, the whatever other groups you wind up attending. And I'm just very, very happy and feel very at ease with people like yourself in place down there. And the future of the college looks very bright. And obviously, we want to see it continue that way. And I appreciate all the time and effort you've done to get in this different sort of direction that we never really focused on before, because it is necessary. It's you know, a big part of our practices, but we never really spoke about it like we do today with folks like you and Lona and everybody out there in the ICPA. So great to have you on board, and look forward to seeing you either at Lyceum or another event sometime in the future.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah, for sure. I'll be at Lyceum for sure. Always.
Well, yeah, backyard.
I know. I love it. I love Lyceum.
Yeah, Sarah, thank you so much for all the information, for all the great work you're doing in Sherman. I wish they had stuff like that when I was in school, which leads me to my question, and I may be a little naive about this, but is there a course or something that field docs can take to get better educated about the pre and post changes that you should be seeing with kids and the
We are-
objective changes?
We are working on an online version.
Right,
We
cool.
got you. We're thinking ahead. So
Well,
yeah.
sign me up for it. I'll be your first student.
Awesome. Thank you.
And me too. So, yeah, that would be,
Never
You're
stop
probably
learning,
doing a
boys.
lot
Never
of it
stop learning.
already.
no, that would be
Anybody
awesome.
else? All right, Sarah, thank you for coming on tonight. That was
Yeah.
fantastic. Shared a
Thank
lot
you
of
so
wisdom
much.
and a lot of information. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Everybody have a great night.
Thank you very
Good night,
much.
everybody.
Appreciate it.
Have a good